Welcome to this series on my channel where I am going to hopefully walk you through the full-on how to write a book. So I intend this series to be kind of a full-on taking you on the journey of writing a book and starting at the beginning with brainstorming your book, going towards writing your first pages, then at some point revising them, getting some feedback, how to kind of get everything step by step on this writing journey. Hi, I'm Clercq. I am a multi-genre writer who shares tips and tricks and talks about her life. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. So one of the first steps in your process is going to be coming up with your story idea. And this can be something that is very personal to you. So I want to take you on the journey of how I usually approach my situations and how I do all these steps that we're going to go through, and also give you some tips and tricks on how you can approach those specific topics. So for today's topic, we're going to talk about brainstorming your idea, because from the initial idea, that is where your whole story is going to come from. You're going to start with one tiny idea and it's going to grow into a full-on book. That is the goal. So I feel people come up with their story ideas in very different ways. I, for example, come up with story ideas all the time. So I don't usually sit down and brainstorm story ideas. I usually just kind of have something pop into my head, have a dream, and then think that would be a cool story idea and write that down. Or I will have just random thoughts pop into my head, which I think could be a cool story idea. I have certain things I'm like, ooh, what if I would do this? And then that is kind of how I come up with my story ideas. I have a full-on video on how to generate your story ideas if you want to watch that. But for this video, we're going to go over how you can brainstorm story ideas. So let's think about the stories that you enjoy reading, or stories that you enjoy consuming, stories that you think would be cool to tell. If you have, for example, a specific personal story that you might want to tell, then consider if this purpose of you writing this story, writing this book, is to eventually publish it, or if you very much so want to do this as a hobby. If maybe you want to write this book but just only show it to friends and family and not necessarily to other people, then kind of figure out what your main goal is for the story, because that might affect what you pick as your story idea. If, for example, your story idea is very personal, you might want to consider only sharing this with your close friends and family and not airing out all of your personal stuff to the rest of the world, unless that is what you're comfortable with. So ways to brainstorm your story idea can be coming up with different words or different things that you enjoy in stories and write those down in maybe like a mind map kind of situation, bullet point list, something like that. So make sure you grab a piece of paper and then let's try and get this rolling. If you think about some of the stuff that you enjoy reading, some of the stories that you enjoy consuming, think about the things that stand out to you and think about what makes that story. So if you, for example, very much so enjoy Star Wars movies, then you might want to say, well, I want something in space. So that is like what it's set in. If you enjoy something completely different, like if you enjoy the Hunger Games, for example, and you want to do something like that, then that becomes very much so a dystopian, people fighting for their lives, like stuff like that would be kind of the things that you would pick from that story and write down onto your piece of paper so that you can kind of brainstorm those things at some point. Once you have a couple things that you enjoy, even if it's just, oh, I enjoy watching this movie, I enjoy watching the series, I enjoy playing this game, I enjoy reading this book, write down what you enjoyed most and what stood out to you most, and then kind of see what list that comes down to and circle some things that you think that is what I find interesting, and then see if you already have juices flowing or if you need more to kind of start with your story idea. So one of the ways that I generate my story ideas is thinking about what if scenarios. For example, if you have written down, I like the Hunger Games, I like people fighting for their lives, I like kind of that setting where they're closed off and it's a tournament and kind of like that. If you enjoy that, cool, you know, write that down. If, for example, you also enjoy the Star Wars scenario where you enjoy the space and whatever, I've never watched Star Wars, so I really don't know why I'm referencing this. But if you enjoy like the space setting, then my question becomes, what if you combine those and you have kind of this battle royale tournament style thing in a arena in space, or in a certain planet that is in space or somewhere? Maybe that becomes your story idea. Maybe you have this idea of a different universe where people don't, you know, walk with their feet, but they walk on their hands. That can become a unique story idea. Something like that. Come up with something that is personal to you, that you would enjoy, but also something that you think is kind of a nice what if scenario. So what if something was different? What if we didn't breathe air? What if we could just live without breathing? What if we didn't walk on our feet, but we walked on our hands? What if everyone was blind and then you're the outlier because you're the one that can see? What if the whole world is soundless? What would happen then? What if certain colors wouldn't exist? Those kinds of things are all kind of ways to help you kickstart a story idea and see if maybe one of those ideas sparks out to you. Other ways that you can generate these story ideas are probably finding like a prompt online, or finding like a list of different kind of topics or different things that you could combine and then come up with your story idea that way. So this is very much focused on a certain kind of topic as your story idea. If you're more someone that generates story ideas based on people, and you're like, well, I want to write about a certain girl that is disabled and I want to write her story, that is also a completely different way of looking at it, and that's also fine. If you're, for example, more like, okay, I want to write about this person that only has one eye, but he is a human, but he goes to a planet that doesn't have humans, so he's seen as the human, and then they mistake him as something. You know, you can write about a certain person or a character that you want to write. As long as it sparks some kind of idea in you, then that is the purpose of this. No idea is the wrong idea. Just write them down and see where you go from there. And don't try to kind of moderate your own thoughts or moderate your own creativity. Just let it flow. And even if you're like, that's not what I want to write, just don't cut yourself off. Just kind of keep going and be like, okay, well, this might not be what I want, but what if I change this? Or hey, I'm just gonna write this down, even though I know that's probably not what I want to write. Maybe that will generate a different idea. If, for example, you're like, okay, I want a creature that is a certain color, and then you write down blue and you're like, nah, that's too much like Avatar, let me write purple. Or you're like, I don't like purple, let me write down green. The fact that you've written down, I want to do something with a character that has a color, you can brainstorm the colors after that. You don't have to stick down to the original color that you picked in that scenario. So the fact that you have already said, oh, I want to write something about a character that's blue, and you're like, ah, that's too much like Avatar. What if you just change your color? You don't have to stick with blue. But the fact that that is, you know, story idea can help you generate more story ideas. If you're like, okay, well, that's too much like Avatar. What if Avatar was different and it wasn't those kind of blue creatures, but what if Avatar was with fish? I don't know. What if Avatar was set underwater and it was mermaids, or that kind of stuff? You just kind of pick something that you enjoy and try and morph it into something completely different. Once you have your topic picked, your story idea kind of set, and you're like, this is actually kind of cool, I wonder what this story could be, and you enjoy already looking at the little tiny things that you have for this story idea, then that's probably the one you want to go with. If you have multiple that you enjoy, like me, I have tons of story ideas that I would want to write, then pick something that either sparks a lot of joy for you in this moment, or that you think you have the most kind of creative juices for. Or if you feel like, but I really like all three of them, or really like all of these, then what I would suggest is kind of see and brainstorm more on those ideas, and then kind of maybe take a piece of paper for each one of these, or a digital document if you're more so a digital note taker. If you have that story idea, then just write down everything you can think of that would go towards that specific story idea, and then do the same with the other ones, and then see which one do I like best, which one do I have most of, which one do I have figured out most, which one is like came naturally to me when I was trying to come up with the characters or trying to come up with the scenarios that they're gonna be in, or this kind of world that they're gonna live in. Something that has helped you kind of come up with the rest of the story ideas and story elements. Pick that one. If you're still unsure which one to pick, but you have a couple that you enjoy, then be sure to keep following this series, and maybe we can try and help you out throughout this series. We're gonna be looking at multiple different aspects of the whole process before you actually start writing. So if you have a couple, bring them to the next videos and do those kind of tips and tricks I have for you on all 3 or all 4 or however many you have. Do them on all of them, and then kind of see which one comes more naturally to you and which one would make the most sense in your head, or which one just feels best. As for the story idea that I am going to be working on, I don't really know. I have some story ideas already on my idea shelf that I think I could develop into this story that I kind of show you guys as an example, but I don't really know which one I want to use for that yet, because I like the idea of being able to show you guys some examples or something that I'm doing to give you guys a little bit of a clue what we should be striving for together. But I don't really know what story I want to pick for this, so I might bring a couple to our next session. So I hope for now that you have some story ideas that you can be working with on our next videos. So make sure you stay tuned if you're watching this in real time. If you're watching this after the fact, then you might already be able to click through the next one.